Heading into week 15 of the fantasy football season, here's a few defenses, DST units I look to get on the waiver wire this week. The first one, the Miami Dolphins. So the Dolphins here, they've been one of the hotter teams in all of football the last 5-6 weeks of the season here. On a great winning streak is Miami, winning 5 games in a row. So right here, they got a good matchup in week 15 versus the New York Jets. I give up the fourth most fantasy points to defenses on the season. So the last few weeks here for Miami, week 11 at the Jets, 17 points allowed, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 12 versus Carolina, 10 points allowed, 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, a touchdown, a block kick. Week 13 versus the Giants, 9 points allowed, 3 sacks and an into. And right here, this week here versus the Jets, they definitely could have a good game. I know they didn't do much in their week 11 matchup versus the Jets, but this Jet team's a mess. Zach Wilson, he don't look that good this season in his rookie season. Obviously, he could improve, but the Jets were without 2 top rookies that have been great contributors to their offense this season. Michael Card is not going to play, and Elijah Moore is not going to play as well. So right here, the Dolphins definitely could do damage in this game, and it wouldn't surprise me to see them find the end zone on special teams or a pick six or something. And they're available in 53% of fantasy leagues. The next defense is the Cleveland Browns. So the Browns here, their front four, they've been playing good this season, and it showed in that ball game in Week 14 versus the Baltimore Ravens. The last few weeks here for the Browns, Week 11 versus Detroit in that one, 10 points allowed, 2 interceptions. Week 12 at Baltimore, 16 points allowed, 2 sacks and 4 intos. And then Week 14 versus Baltimore, 22 points allowed, 4 sacks, 2 fumble recoveries, including a swipe, scoop, and score by Myles Garrett in that one. So right here, good matchup week 15 versus Vegas. Vegas gives up the 19th most fantasy points to defenses on the season. And right here, this Cleveland Brown defense, like I mentioned, they got a good front four. They got a good corner in Denzel Ward. And this Raider offense has just been in a tailspin over the last few weeks. And I think the Browns, once again, could have a decent ball game. The next defense is the Washington football team. So the Washington football team, their defense has played great football over the last month of the season here. They had a tough loss versus the Dallas Cowboys, but their defense, to be honest, kept them in that game. The Cowboys had a lot of short fields and even scored a touchdown on a fumble recovery, but the defense played good versus that Cowboy offense, and they got another decent matchup here in week 15 at the Philadelphia Eagles. So the last few games here for the Washington football team defense, week 12 versus Seattle, 13 points allowed, 2 sacks, a fumble recovery. Week 13 at Vegas, 15 points allowed, 2 sacks. And week 14 versus Dallas, 21 points allowed, 4 sacks, a pick six, and 2 interceptions on the day. So right here, week 15, I think they can make some trouble here for Jalen Hurts in that offense. Right here, they made this Cowboy team look like a mediocre to a poor offense in this ball game. So their defense has been playing good. Teams are only scoring anywhere from 15 to 20, 23 points a game here. And versus Philly, I think they could do it once again as Washington. I know they still got a chance at the wild card, and it's going to start with defense in the running game. And Dallas just took them out of their game early, but the defense still showed up for Washington. So right now they're available in 74% of fantasy leagues, and I would give them an ad this week. The next defense is the Minnesota Vikings. So the Vikings here have been a hot and cold defense for fantasy owners throughout the season, but a lot of ball games where they've just been in shootouts this year here is Minnesota. But week 15, they got a great matchup with the Chicago Bears, even though the Bears did put up 30 points versus the Green Bay Packers in week 14. The last few weeks here for this Viking defense, week 12 at San Francisco, 34 points allowed, 2 sacks and into a return touchdown. Week 13 at Detroit, 29 points allowed, 3 sacks and into and a fumble recovery. In week 14 versus Pittsburgh, they did give up 28 points, but had 5 sacks and an into. So right here, Monday Night Football at Chicago, I could see it being a grinded out type of ball game, kind of, between these two division rivals, even though, like I mentioned, the Bears lost 45-30 in their ball game on Sunday Night Football versus the Green Bay Packers. But anyway, this is going to be a good ball game. I think the Vikings can make a few plays, and right now they're available in 61% of fantasy leagues. And the fifth and final defense I'd look to get on the wire this week here is the Houston Texans. I know the Texans, one of the worst teams in football this season, but this is a 1 week ad here for their DST with a great matchup at the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just can't find the end zone. They can't move the football. The Titans just shut them out, even though the Titans defense has been hit or miss this season. So the last few games here for Houston, week 12 versus the Jets, 21 points allowed, 4 sacks and into. Week 13 versus Indy, 31 points allowed, a sack, a fumble recovery. In week 14 versus Seattle, they did nothing. 33 points allowed, -1 fantasy points. But right here, it's a 1 week only type of ad on the wire for Houston. At Jacksonville, like I mentioned, they can't move the ball. They can't score touchdowns. This is a division matchup. And I could see this ball game being in the mid-teens to low 20s between these two teams. So right here, I think this Texan defense could make a few plays on Trevor Lawrence in this Jacksonville offense. And right now, they're available in 95% of fantasy leagues. So that's a few defenses I looked at on the wire for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.